Tutors, mentors, and the city with your host.com.
The City Tutors presents
Tutors, mentors, and the city
with your host.com.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Kevin.com Brown, and welcome to Tutors, Mentors, and the City. And like I do every episode, please help me in joining my guest for this episode. Please give it up for Mr. Jerome Tennille. Yay! How are you, Jerome?
You know, I'm doing good. I cannot complain.
Now, I'm hoping I got the last name right. I meant to ask you, how do I pronounce the last name, but I did not. So did I get the last name right? Was I close?
Yeah, it's Tennille. So for those of a different generation, Captain and Tennille, that'll I think
Captain and
resonate
Tennille.
with a lot of folks. But yeah, that's it.
I am exactly from that generation you're referring to. So that's actually the only time I've ever heard that name before, from Captain and Tennille.
Yeah, that's correct. It's funny, when I was in the military, I used to get teased about it quite often from my division officer because I was in the Navy and our commanding officer was a captain, and so he would always joke around and say, all I want to do is get a picture with the Captain and Tennille. And he was obviously referencing our CO and me being standing side by side. But yeah, that's correct.
Yes. Now, what's the origins of that name for you? How'd you get that name?
My father, and where that originates from, I honestly couldn't tell you. But yeah, that's my father. I think he was born and raised in Alabama, and so I think we have some suspicions that it's of French origin, but that's we don't know like the true lineage of where he got that name.
Right. I'm just getting to a point in my life where I care about that stuff. You can go through your whole life and not care, right? You're so focused on your grind, so focused on your family, you're so focused on the things you have to do. And I believe when my daughter hit a certain age, I realized something, that my daughter knew her mother's side of the family very well, and she didn't know her father's side, because fathers don't really care about that stuff, right? So I got to a point when my daughter hit a certain age. I said, I have to take you to your family reunions. I need you to meet your father's side of the family.
Yeah.
Right. So that was just one of those things, like it was a rite of passage for me and my baby girl, right? That made me, as a result of trying to make her get to know her family, I had to learn more about the family. So, whatever the reason, but there's some phases in your life where it's a non-thing. It is what it is, right?
Yeah, of course.
Now, all that being said, I love your backdrop. I love your backdrop. Are you in your office now?
Yeah, so since 2020, I've obviously been working a lot more from home. And over the years, my background and what I have sort of surrounding me in my workspace has changed. And this is sort of my 2023 backdrop. And a part of it is accomplishments that I'm very proud of. But then others that you see back there are more of it gives me the fire, it gives me a fire sort of under my behind every day when I look at some of these things, because some of these things are sort of motivational for me, because they represent like exactly why I do what I do in the social impact space. But yeah, you're seeing the new and improved Jerome Tennille home workspace backdrop.
Okay, so there is no plan. What does that mean to you?
Yeah, so it's funny because most people who know me personally, professionally, because I was in the military for about 8 years, people know that I always enjoy having a plan. Like, I love structure. I like having a plan A, plan B, plan C. I like to be able to and being open to whatever the universe is giving you, not having a plan and going in and just being down for whatever sometimes is the best way to approach a situation. And what I mean by that is sometimes, you know, because of our own unique experiences in life, we approach things with a preconceived idea of how we're going to approach it. And that's not always the case, right? Sometimes you need to go into something open-minded, and then you approach it afterwards, and you're like, okay, this is the situation, this is the environment, this is what I am receiving. Now let's figure out what to do. So that's what that is, right? Sometimes the best plan is to not have a plan.
You know, that last way you put it is the story of my life, right? It's the story of my life. I wake up every day and I reevaluate, and then I make a decision based on that. But I never articulated it the way you just did, and I never heard it articulated the way you just did. But I appreciate that. I respect that. Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you.
Of course.
Now, that being said, who are you? Who tell my audience who you are.
It's interesting. So there's a movie with Adam Sandler, and Jack Nicholson is the I think he's like a counselor, a psychologist, and he says, "Who are you?" And in every instance of him asking that question to Adam Sandler is like, "This is my name. This is what I do." And Jack Nicholson says, "No, don't tell me your name. Don't tell me what you do. Tell me who you are." And since seeing that movie, every time that somebody says, "Who are you?" I actually really struggle with answering that, because I think I'll speak for myself, but I think especially in a society where we live here, especially in the United States and sort of westernized civilization, too often the things that we do professionally and the things that we do in life, we almost cling on to as sort of our identity. If you were to ask me who I was 11 years ago when I was in the military, it probably would have been very much aligned with my being a sailor in the United States Navy. Since then, I've evolved into different versions of myself over and over and over. And I think I'm still trying to figure out like what am I, who am I, what is the version that I am of myself. I think at the core I remain the same, but different versions of me sort of evolve over the years. This is how I would sort of answer that. Who am I? I'm a duty-driven person, and that sense of duty and purpose, for me, I think it shows up in how I carry myself in my relationships, how I carry myself in sort of day-to-day interactions, as I sort of live. It also shows up in the type of work I do, and also just as important is how I do the work that I do and feel so passionate about. I don't know if that gets to the heart of answering who I am, but beyond my name and those things that are probably very sort of public, right? You can find these things on LinkedIn or whatever. That's who I am. I'm a duty-driven, purpose-driven human being, and the things that I do in both my personal and professional life, I hope really reflect that through the actions that I sort of take.
Absolutely, great answer. Because typically I ask people who are they, and they'll tell me what they do, right?
Yeah.
Tell me what their job description or their career or whatever, their career label. Now that's not an inappropriate answer. I mean, the answer, whatever answer you choose, there is no wrong answer to that question, right?
Yeah.
But you definitely have demonstrated that you've given it some thought, right? Because like you said in the movie, you know, I didn't ask you what you do. I asked you who you are. That's a thoughtful. You gave a thoughtful response to that.
And the
Now,
movie is Anger Management, just for those who are
anger
listening.
management.
Anger Management.
Yeah,
They should
yeah.
watch it if they've not seen it. It's funny.
I have not seen it, so I'm gonna watch it. Thank you for that. Because when you said it, I was like, Adam Sandler and Jack Nicholson did a movie together. I didn't even
Uh,
see. I know I didn't see it. So I thought you were gonna make like a Happy Madison,
oh, Happy
connection
Gilmore.
or
Yeah.
something. Yeah, Happy Gilmore. Happy Madison's the name of his production company, right? So yeah, Happy Gilmore, connection, or one of those weirdo movies that he made, The Water Boy or something. Um, but yeah, okay. So I'm gonna look for that movie, anger management. Now, you mentioned LinkedIn. So let's see if we can get an answer that the clientele of city tutors can more directly relate to.
Yeah.
For those people that don't know, City Tutors is a nonprofit, um, tutoring, free tutoring and mentorship service, and we service underserved communities, typically in New York, but primarily in the CUNY system. We have a ton of students from. I'm a graduate of City College. I'm our executive director, Gary Rifkin, is a CCNY graduate and former professor. But we service most of the CUNY system, even though we do service anybody that needs, the service we provide. Now, that being said, typically it's uh, young people about to graduate, recent grads, trying to build a life, trying to follow a career path. So I'm going to ask the question from that perspective. What do you do?
What do I do? So, um, I am a corporate responsibility and social impact consultant. So, my more formal title is Director of Social Impact and ESG for the Uplift Agency. And the Uplift Agency is a full service boutique consulting firm that focuses on corporate social impact, corporate sustainability, and ESG programming and communication. And so we work with corporations to help fully design and execute their environmental, social, and governance programming. And there's a lot that sort of fits in that. So I'll paint some color to that for your audience. So when we're talking about environmental, social, and governance, when we're talking about, say, environmental considerations, it's things like working with our corporate clients to conduct greenhouse gas inventories so that a corporation understands their carbon footprint and can also put in a plan to sort of reduce and mitigate their footprint. It's doing a double materiality assessment for our corporate clients so they understand the issues that are most highest prioritized for all the different stakeholders of those corporations. When we're thinking about things like the social or the S in the ESG, it's some of those more traditional corporate responsibility or CSR type of functions that most people are familiar with, like corporate philanthropy, corporate volunteerism, employee engagement. It's the diversity and inclusion type of programming, but it also is things like human rights due diligence planning, where we're able to work with corporations to have visibility and transparency up and down their full supply chain, and to also mitigate the human rights violations that they might find as a result of their suppliers or the vendors that they're doing business with, and then to also mitigate and remediate those risks. And then when we're talking about governance, it's really about the ethics and how a corporation is essentially practicing its more traditional business practices, but it's also the type of controls that they're able to put in place that allow them to more effectively and efficiently execute on the environmental and the social programming. So to get to your original question, what is it do I do? For the firm, which of course spans a whole spectrum of things that we support, I really focus on the social impact programming for the firm with our corporate clients.
Listen, Jerome, you could have just said, I'm brilliant. That's what I do. I'm brilliant. Because you sounded brilliant. That answer was brilliant. Like yo, I'm listening. I'm a smart guy. I'm a smart guy, and I have a great base of skill sets that allows me. I think I can infiltrate in many sectors and just fit in and adapt and be able to do what people do from industry to industry. But what you just said, I was listening to you and I'm like, I can't do any of that stuff that he just said. I can't.
Well,
That yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, yeah, I think you're undervaluing some of your skills, right? I think being adaptable and super flexible and being able to be able to support different projects, and it's fast paced, like, and if you're able to sort of be a chameleon, that's great, because I think one of the things that I've learned is that it requires a great amount of flexibility. And and one of the things that I'll never claim to be is brilliant. Like, let's be real. This is probably the most growth that I've experienced since leaving the military. So it 10, 11 years, this is probably the most growth that I've felt professionally, because I have to learn so much stuff. And let me tell you this too, is of the work that Uplift does, we have a lot of consummate professionals. These are people who are like experts, technical experts in their field around climate action and sustainability and human rights. These are things that they have been doing for 10, 15, some of them 20 plus years. And those are the people to me that are brilliant, because every time that they're speaking about their subject matter expertise, I'm just like, gosh, like every time that they speak, like I'm learning something new. And so brilliant is never what I would associate with myself. One of the things that I really like about the work that I do is that it requires constant growth, because the social and the environmental issues that corporations are facing are changing minute by minute, and they're accelerating at such a pace that to keep up is in of itself a challenge.
Great point. Great point about that. So you won't describe yourself as brilliant. Okay, so let's back up. Let's back up. Let's go to, this is the unpacking section. This is the unpacking section of the interview. All right. You heard me do it with you said you saw Kay Bell's interview, so I'm about to do that. I'm about to unpack you a little bit. So let's go back to a young lad, Jerome. Where were you born?
Oh, Inglewood, California. So for those who don't know Inglewood, they probably best know it now because of SoFi Stadium where the Los Angeles Rams play. That's Inglewood, California. But the Inglewood, California that I grew up in Los Angeles was in the 80s and 90s. So it was a horrible neighborhood back then. I'm certain Inglewood has come long ways since then, but that's where I was born and raised. It's Inglewood, California.
Listen, I can relate. I went to Brooklyn Tech before the Barclay Center, right? And I'm from the Bronx, so going to Brooklyn was a foreign land. But when the Barclay Center came, it not only brought a team, but it brought an economy
Yeah.
to Brooklyn.
Mm-hmm.
So Brooklyn was another planet before the Barclay Center. It's a whole nother thing now. So I can just imagine what the SoFi Center did for Inglewood. So okay, so you were a young lad in Inglewood, California. Public school or private school?
Public.
Public school. You did the whole 12-year thing?
So my mother, she's so smart, and before we got to high school, she moved us out of Los Angeles. I mean, primarily because it was just a really bad neighborhood. So, living and growing up in Inglewood, you're exposed to gun violence, you're exposed to gang violence. I lived through the Los Angeles riots, and at a certain point, and I think the bad thing is that not everybody's got the ability to move out of their circumstances. And my mother, she made a tremendous sacrifice moving us out of Los Angeles. So luckily, and I say luckily not lightly at all, but luckily, I didn't have to go to the same high school that she did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Losing her high school is where I would have went to high school. And
so where'd you go?
Oh gosh. So we moved from Los Angeles to Northern California. And most people, they associate like the Bay Area with Northern California. To me, that's the Bay Area. It's not Northern California. When you look at a map of California, let me explain how far north I'm talking about. It's like a 5-minute drive from the Oregon border. If you're looking at the northwesternmost corner of the California map, that's where we moved to. Is a little place called Crescent City, California. Or if you had the opportunity to watch Training Day with Denzel Washington, he makes a reference to Pelican Bay State Prison. That's where
Yeah.
Pelican Bay State Prison is. That's how north.
Ah.
That's how north we moved from Los Angeles to Crescent City, and so went from inner city Los Angeles to the middle of nowhere, population 13,000. Culture
And
shock.
that population, yes, and that population was probably dependent on the prison, right? It was
Yes.
that's
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. Everybody I knew, like every other person, like their prison, or their father worked at the prison as a correctional officer.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So that had to be interesting. And you're what years did you do that? What years were you out there? Ninth,
Um,
10th, 11th, 12th, something like that?
Sixth grade through um through 11th. So then when I was a junior in high school, then we uprooted again and went somewhere else, which was certainly fine. But I think that the most traumatic experience, if I want to call it that, as a child who's trying to figure out who they are and the things that they enjoy doing, and uprooting and going to like the farthest end of the state where very different culture, very just a different way of life. Everything is different. Everything was different. Like I went from playing street hockey in the streets to like trying to figure out what to do with myself with the 40 acres of woods behind our home.
Ah, yes, yes. Did you grow up with siblings?
Yeah, so one brother,
Okay,
and
older or younger?
he's a year and a half older. Um, if you look at us side by side, you would probably think that we were twins or that we were very, very close in terms of age. But he's actually a year and a half older than I am.
Well, you know what? I would imagine if they lined you up, your brother up, and me up, right? We both got the cool beards. Both got the bald heads. They might think we're triplets, right? They might just think
Yeah, yeah.
they
We
might think
got
we're just
we
three.
got the trends there. And the other thing too is we all have glasses as well.
Ah,
I'm just
there
not
we
wearing them
go.
right now. So
It's like
we're like,
looking in the mirror right now.
yeah, we're like carbon copies of each other.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, so you finish your senior year and you go where?
Uh, I started school. So after high school, I graduated, and I started going to a community college and saying, okay, like what am I interested in? What are the things that I'm gonna pursue academically? And I decided to not do that. So I finished a semester of school, and I decided that I was going to go into the military instead. Um, and it's not that I didn't think that like school was like right for me. Like I eventually went back and finished undergrad and grad school, and like my academic pursuit has been around sustainability and operations. Um, but back then, younger me, I was always really patriotic, and I still am. And I realized in that moment that if I didn't join the military, and if I had decided to like finish school first and pursue a career path and something, that I'd probably never go back and join the military, right? Like, and that's a very natural thing for people to do, is to like go to school, finish school, and then take an entry level role at whatever career progression that gets them closer to where they want to end up professionally. And I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to have a regret in my life. And I knew that if I didn't join the military, and if I had went on some, career path that never took me back to the military, I would regret it. I would have regretted it. So instead, I decided I was going to finish a semester in school, and then I would join the military. And so I did that, and that was in it was 2004, and then it was the fall of 2004 that I went to in the Navy. We don't call it boot camp. It's boot camp, but they call it recruit division. What do they call it? They call it recruit. Uh, I don't know. Recruit something training. They don't call it boot camp, but it's the same thing.
Uh, okay. Okay. So how long were you in the military?
2004 to 2012.
All right. So if you had a chance, if you had the chance to play that time over again,
Yeah.
how impactful was the military for you, and would you do it that way if you had a chance to do it all over again?
It's a tough question because I'll give you two different answers. Um, I'm only here today who I am now because of everything that I experienced in the military, both good and bad. The military is probably one of the best decisions that I've made, and I made a lot of mistakes when I was in the military. Um, but without those mistakes, I wouldn't have arrived at the career path that I ended up taking when I left the military service in 2012. Um, would I do anything different? Yeah, I think I'd probably do some things different, right? And again, back then I was much younger and I was dumber and I was more arrogant. I just wasn't as smart. And there are certainly, I think, decisions that I would have made back through that time that, of course, I would redo. Not so much because of the things that it did to me, but because of the other people that it left in its wake. And what I mean by that is, when you're young, and my priorities at the time were very different than they are now. You make mistakes and they affect more than just you. Like, I can absolutely live with the mistakes that only affect me. Like, that's really easy to like come to grips with. But I think there are certainly decisions that I've made in the past that I'm just like, gosh, like that was such a boneheaded move. And Jerome, it didn't just affect you, it affected these other people. And yeah, so yeah, I would certainly take a mulligan. I would certainly take a redo and try to figure out how to be how to have been a better sailor, a better person. Um, Having said all that, if I could have a redo on some of those and still arrive at the career path that I've chosen post military, like that would be ideal because, again, it was only through some of those mistakes that I've made that I've arrived at where I am today. If I had not made mistakes, like who knows what I would be doing right now.
Okay, okay, good point, good point. Now, that being said, in your journey, circling back to the tutoring and mentorship angle of city tutors, did you have did you ever need a tutor, and who would you call your mentors?
Oh, tutors and mentors. So, did I ever need a tutor? Yes. Uh, Particularly because I wasn't great at academics. So I definitely need a tutor around certain academic subjects, right? Like math, English. Um, you know, did I ever need a did I have a mentor? I think that the short answer to that is no. I don't think there's ever been a consistent mentor in my life. Having said that, there are people in my life who are influential, and there are people who probably didn't know that they were mentoring me. And so, of course, would they call themselves mentors? Probably not. Would I call them a formal mentor? No. But were they mentoring me unknowingly? Yeah, of course. And I think that there are individuals in my life that I was like, that were good influences, and people that there were little bits and pieces of positive influence that I took from every single one of them.
Okay, copy that. Copy that. Now, that all that being said, what's the best advice that you received in your journey that you can recall?
The best advice. Hmm, Gosh, people love giving me advice. I've gotten a lot of advice in my day. The best piece of advice. Um, this is probably going to seem sort of abstract, and sort of maybe off center to what one would expect advice to sort of be and sound like. But I think the advice that I've gotten, um, and I get this advice from several different places, mind you. So I know this is good advice because it's several people that I care about who tell me the same thing in different ways. Um, to be kind to yourself. And the reason I say
Mm,
that is because I'm my own harshest critic. Like,
mm,
if I make a mistake, or if I perceive that I've made a mistake, or if I perceive somebody else as telling me something that I'm thinking that I interpret as, Jerome, you didn't do good, I'll beat myself up over it more than other people can possibly beat me up over it. So and so I'm overcritical of myself and the things that I do or don't do. And the best piece of advice, and this is probably advice that I probably should have received when I was in the military, just be more kind to myself. um the people that I'm surrounded with now, for the most part, are different than the people that I was surrounded by when I was in the military. And that's not to disparage anybody that I was surrounded by in the military. I still know them and love them deeply. But the advice that they would give me is very different than the advice that some of these others in my life now would give me. And that advice, just be kind to myself, because I can be so hard on myself that it's detrimental to me. Um, so if I'm just kinder to myself, like that makes things just infinitely better.
wow. Okay. Okay. So, uh, that advice sounds like something you they observe something about you,
Yeah.
and they're nudging you. Okay, they're nudging you.
Yeah.
Guy saying, "Hey, man, pulling your coat," right? Now that being said, that's fine. So you've taken your journey. You spent time in the military. You went back to college. Sounds like you went back to college and you got some advanced degrees. Um, what's the best advice you would offer? Like, so you can't you wouldn't offer to a bunch of strangers, be kind to yourself, because you don't know, they might be being kind to themselves already.
Yeah.
What would be the best advice you would offer to a young person that wants to, that's trying to make it in this world?
Um, be patient, take time, and get to know who you are first. And
Okay.
the reason I say that is because there's so much pressure on youth to start charting their career path, like when they're like in eighth grade, right? Like in some instances, they're getting exposure to job paths like before high school. Um,
Hmm.
I'll tell you what, I wasn't in any state of mind or mindset to figure out what the heck I wanted to do when I was in eighth grade, let alone high school, let alone when I started school after high school, right? It took me years, and going into the military and leaving the military and accidentally getting a job as a volunteer coordinator and doing that job for a couple years at a 501c3 to figure out what the heck I wanted to do with the rest of my life. I think there is enormous amount of social pressures that youth face, whether it's from their parents, whether it's from their school counselors, whether it's from just society in general, to like, you better have your stuff together, you better know what pathway you're going to take, you better start, in the California school system, it's like, you're starting to plan, and you're taking high school credit courses for if you're going to go to a state school, or if you're going to go to a UC and go through the UC system. Um, and that's a lot of pressure, right? And most people they're making all these decisions to have long-term implications taking out school debt or college debt to do a job or to study something academically when they're actually not even sure if they want to do that for the rest of their lives. And then and all of a sudden they go through 4-year university and grad school, and they're saddled with $100,000 worth of student loans. And then all of a sudden they get into the job and they're just like, gosh, this isn't all that I wanted it to be. And then it's like, what do you do now? So that would be my advice is, even with all the pressures that exist, be patient, figure yourself out before you start to make those decisions. Because once you get to be my age, and I'm not even that old, but once you get to be my age, it's really hard to start to reverse track on what you're going to do. It becomes a little bit tougher. It's not impossible, and I know it's not impossible. I know a lot of people who've made career shifts, but it's not easy.
It's definitely not easy. Absolutely. Okay. I appreciate that. Now, so we've covered a lot of things. Is there anything we left out?
Yeah, too much. I mean, gosh, it's a hard question. I don't know why I'm struggling with that one so much. Is there anything that we left out? I mean, there's obviously a lot that we could talk about and unpack and keep unpacking. But is there anything left out? Is there anything that I didn't share that I want to share? Not necessarily. I think we did a good job. What about you? You think we did a good job, Kevin?
No, I think we're fine. But see, that's a you question, right? That's a you question.
Yeah.
So sometimes I'll ask that question and it'll trigger a lot of things, right?
Yeah.
So I've talked to people, do the whole interview, and then at the very end of the conversation, I find out, oh yeah, by the way, I'm a concert pianist, or when I was young, I used to run, I went to the Olympic trials. People have these
Yeah.
amazing lives and these amazing skills, and they just leave it out, and
No.
then it'll come out in the last question, and I'm
Yeah.
always like, what? How could you not talk about that?
Yeah. Well, I'm not a secret Olympian, so I think we're good here.
Well, you are a secret champion for us.
Oh,
I appreciate your time. You seem like you got a great head on your shoulders, and I'm sure that there were things that in your career path that many young people can relate to. I think there was a lot of mentorship that could be gathered out of the advice that you shared. And on behalf of City Tutors, and on behalf of our executive director Gary Rifkin, and all of our volunteers, and the whole team and the whole family, I appreciate you so much, and thank you so much for joining me for Tutors, Mentors, and the City.
thank you. I appreciate you having me today. It's such a pleasure, and it's good to connect and to also connect with the audience.